Indeed, this worldly life's no more than a pastime and pleasure's vain. The final hope, that's life for sure. With their knowledge, this much attain.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين يا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. اللهم صل على الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى. The first of our salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. The third with your loudest voices in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Imam Hussain salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh was born on the 3rd of Sha'ban in the 4th year after Hijrah and died on the 10th of Muharram in the 61st year after Hijrah at the age of 57. He is revered by many as the greatest martyr in Islamic history, as well as seen by many as an exemplar in terms of his leadership, his generosity, his bravery and his humility. A man from whose life many a lesson may be learnt and many a principle may be derived. And a man whose acts in his life and standpoints have affected both Muslims and non-Muslims until today. Unfortunately, however, this personality has been understudied. And the idea that when you look at the majority of our knowledge concerning his life, the majority of our knowledge or much of our knowledge concerning his life relates to the last year of his life. If you were to ask many people about the first 56 years of the life of Imam al-Hussain, you'll find many who will not be able to come up with many anecdotes regarding the first 56 years of his life. Most people know about his life in the last few months. When he left Medina to go to Mecca, when he left Mecca to go towards Kufa, and he stopped at an area called Karbalá. That is about as much knowledge as most people have of this personality's life. And this is somewhat shameful on our part. that a person who the Prophet described as the master of the youth of paradise, and who the Prophet would say, Hussein is from me and I am from Hussein, Allah loves the one who loves Hussein, it is sad that we only know about the last days of his life. If you were to ask yourself, how many narrations do you know from the mouth of Imam al-Hussein? As in, how many hadiths can you narrate? Or if you were to ask yourself the question, how many stories do you know about Imam al-Hussein? You'll find many who will come forward and say that barring the 10th of Muharram, our knowledge of Imam al-Hussein is quite limited. That's why tonight, let's have an examination of Imam al-Hussein from the day he was born until the day he was martyred, in order to see the number of important lessons that we can learn from his life. Not only in understanding his relationships, but also in understanding the principles that affected non-Muslims as much as it affected Muslims today. As we said, he was born on the 3rd of Sha'ban in the 4th year after Hijrah. He was the second of the 4 children of arguably one of the most beautiful marriages within the religion of Islam. As we know, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen had married Fatima al-Zahra, and in that marriage they had 4 children. They had a 5th child who was a miscarried child by the name of Muhsin. But the 4 children was, of course, Imam al-Hassan, Imam al-Hussein, Sayyida Zainab and Kulthum. And you find that Lady Fatima had conceived Imam al-Hussein and had known that she was pregnant with Imam al-Hussein 52 days after she gave birth to Imam al-Hassan. 52 days later, she knew that she was pregnant again. And the narrations tell us that when it came to the time of the birth of the Imam, the narrations tell us that there were mixed feelings surrounding his birth. Normally, when you have a child who's about to be born in the family, normally there is a sense of pride and a sense of joy surrounding the whole family. As in, it's very rare to see a grandfather who's quite sad, or a grandfather who feels some sort of sadness, or a grandmother, or a father, or a mother. Yet Imam al-Hussein, many of the reports indicate that surrounding his birth, there was a sense of a feeling that this child will have an ending that is one full of sadness. The first to comment on this was al-Fadl, the wife of Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet. al-Fadl came to the Prophet and she said to him, Ya Rasulullah, I saw a strange dream last night. He said to her, what did you see? She said, I saw a piece of your flesh in my lap. And I wondered, what is this? To which the Prophet said to her, glad tidings, Fatima will give birth and the boy will be in your hands. Then you find when Fatima al-Zahra gave birth to the Imam on the 3rd of Sha'ban, the narrations tell us that Rasulullah walked heavily to the house of Fatima. When Imam al-Hassan was born, you found that Rasulullah brisked to the house of Fatima. Whereas Imam al-Hussein, when he was born, the narrations say that the Prophet walked heavily. He took heavy steps to the house of Fatima. He called Asma. He said, Asma, where is my Hussein? And she brought Hussein. As soon as she brought Imam al-Hussein to him, he took Imam al-Hussein and began to cry. She said to him, O Prophet of God, why do you cry? As in, this is a newborn child. Surely it's meant to be joy. He said, this child will be slain by an unjust group of people. And may Allah not grant them intercession for what they did. But do not tell Fatima, for Fatima has just come out of labor. And I do not want her to hear this news. You therefore find that from the beginning, his grandfather had a major connection with him. And highlighted to us a very important point. A child learns as much from the grandfather as they do with the father if both are living in the same house. Some of us were honored and fortunate enough that we were brought up in a house where our grandfather is alive. Isn't that true? As in, some of us, when we were young, our grandfathers were in our lives. Some of us, even when we got to our teenage years, our grandfathers were alive. The narrations tell us that the importance of the grandfather is like the father. The child picks up from the grandfather as much as the child picks up from the father. And that Rasulullah, the first thing he did in showing his affection to the child was what? Was that he performed a series of ceremonies which would become lessons for us when a child is born in our family. The first thing he did when Hussein was in his lap was he recited adhan in his right ear and iqamah in his left. Sometimes people ask the question, why is it when a child is born in Islam, you recite adhan in the right and iqamah in the left? The Prophet himself said, because this moves away the whispers of shaitan from the child. We know very well in the Quran, what do we say? قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ مِنْ شَرِّ الْوَسْوَاسِ الْخَنَّاسِ. Ya Allah, I seek refuge from the whispering of shaitan. When we recite adhan in the right ear and iqamah in the left, the meaning is that we want to remove away the whispers of shaitan. That's number one. Number two, what did Rasulullah then have 7 days later? He had the aqiqah ceremony. Today, when a child is born, you have the aqiqah. People ask, what is this aqiqah ceremony? Why do you do it? Because the Prophet, we learned, he did it with Imam Hussain. What did he do? The Prophet with Imam Hussain, he came forward and he said that a sheep is to be slaughtered and that sheep is to be given away to the poor. And further than this, a leg of mutton is to be given away to the midwife because of what she helped us with in the pregnancy. Some of us, when our child is born in the hospital, forget about the midwife. We're more concerned with our wife, isn't it? You find that the Prophet of God, what did he tell us? He said, this midwife has been a helper in that child's birth. Don't neglect her position. At least in this day and age, offer her a box of chocolates, offer her some flowers, offer her something. In that time, Rasulullah said, where's the midwife? Bring her to me. When they brought her, he said, give a leg of mutton towards this midwife. After that, when he shaved the hair of Imam al-Hussein, the weight of it in silver was given out to the poor. And that is a sunnah that remains with us until today. After that, what did he do? He recited a dua, which I recommend any future fathers to recite a supplication which is available in any book on Imam al-Husayn's life. The dua was a dua where he prayed, Ya Allah, remove the envy of the people from Hussein like the way Ibrahim prayed for you to remove the envy from Ishaq and Ismail. Because not everybody, when you tell people I've got the news of a child, don't think everybody is happy. There are some people, maybe they are childless, and there might be the tangs of envy in them. There may be others who have one child, but you've had your second, who may have two children, but you have your third, who may have 3 children, but you have your 4th. Not everybody looks at you and says congratulations, but inside they want to stab you straight away. Sometimes what you should do is do what the Prophet did. The Prophet said, recite the dua, that when Hussein is born, he recited, Ya Allah, protect Hassan and Hussein, like Ibrahim asked you to protect Ishaq and Ismail. When he came to the naming of Imam al-Hussein, there are 3 reports about the naming. These facts are vital. There are 3 reports. We reject 2 of them and we accept 1 of them. There is one report which said, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, when Hassan was born, when Imam al-Hassan was born, he wanted to name him Harb. Harb, what does it mean in English? War. What a beautiful name to name your son. War. Imagine you look at your son and you say, Salamu alaikum, war. So Rasulullah came to him and he said to him very clearly that, no, Ali, change his name from Harb to Hassan. Then when Imam al-Hussein was born, Imam Ali said, now I want to name him War. Rasulullah said, change his name from War to Hussein. Then the narration says, when Muhsin was born and Rasulullah held him, Rasulullah named him Harb, or Imam Ali named him Harb. Rasulullah said, no, change his name to Muhsin. Why do we reject this hadith? Number 1, Muhsin was never born. Muhsin was a miscarried child of Fatima. Number 2, Ali ibn Abi Talib, when Rasulullah once tells him not to do anything, he doesn't do it 3 times. Number 3, there's no better name for Ali ibn Abi Talib to name than War. These are the names of Jahiliyyah. In Jahiliyyah, they used to name their sons Shaitan and Zalim and names like this. You know, very pleasant names for you to give your children. So in Jahiliyyah, because they used to name their sons, so the attribution was that Imam Ali had no other name but Harb. We reject this. Then there's a second narration which says Imam Ali wanted to name Hassan, he wanted to name him Hamza, and he wanted to name Hussein Ja'far, because two of them had been shuhada. But that Rasulullah said no, we don't accept any of these. It was Rasulullah who decided that his name will be Hussein. And that attachment between Rasulullah and Imam al-Hussein was a wonderful attachment. Sometimes a grandfather can be the worst role model for a child. Sometimes a grandfather can be the best role model for a child. How many times do you see in some films which appear in the media that the grandfather is this drunkard old man who's swearing the whole day and asleep in the night? You see that sometimes. The grandfather's just sitting down the whole day, grumpy, angry, doesn't want to talk to anyone, swearing the whole time. Rasulullah taught us that you as a grandfather, that child looks at your behavior. If you're rude or angry or unpleasant or have a mannerism where you are someone who is always stubborn, that child picks up on your mannerisms. Whereas if you are the embodiment of warmth and humility, the child grows up a warm and humble child. Today in Muslim communities, I tell you, we have some grumpy grandparents. You have grandparents who the whole day, all they're doing is nagging. Where's the food? Where's the tea? Where's the tea? Where's the food? Bring me this, bring me that. Or the child's looking at it and say, what is this? Angry machine we've created at home? Or is this a human being? Whereas Rasulullah, what did he try and show? Rasulullah tried to show very clearly that look at me as the embodiment of warmth and the embodiment of manners. And if I have this warmth and manners, then Hussein will grow up with warmth and manners as well. In which way? You know the Arabs, for example, Rasulullah, what did he do with Imam al-Hussein? He'd lengthen his sujood if Imam al-Hussein was on his back. He'd be on prostration, he'd lengthen his prostration if Imam al-Hussein was on the back. If Imam al-Hussein, he saw him, he would hug him, kiss him, embrace him. There was an Arab man by the name of Al-Agra. That means his mother named him the bald one. Al-Agra saw Rasulullah one day embracing Imam al-Hussein. He said to him, Muhammad, you actually kiss your children? He said to him, yes. Why? He said, I've got 10 kids, I've never kissed any of them. He said to him, why? He said, because sign of masculinity. What am I doing kissing and hugging? People will look at me and say, look at him, he's not a man. Rasulullah replied, he who does not show mercy to his children will not be shown mercy by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mercy, that warmth that was there. And number two, the manners of Rasulullah. The grandchild looks at the akhlaq. He looks at this man humble or is he arrogant? Is he easy to talk to or is he hard-hearted? Imam al-Hussein at a young age would see his grandfather humble with everyone, respectful. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. His morals would be the highest morals. And that's why a young Imam al-Hussein stands next to his elder brother seeing a man perform wudu. They're seeing this man perform wudu, and the man is doing wudu in completely the wrong way. He is washing his hands first, then he is washing his face, then he does his feet, then he goes back to the head. You could easily come to him and say, oh man, are you stupid or something? As in, you do not know how to do wudu? Look how old you are. Some of our people, wallah, they will do this. Our people today, Muslims, when they see someone not practicing his prayers properly, they'll look at him and say, look at this guy, he's 50, 60, he can't even pray properly. Imam al-Hussein sees his grandfather's mannerisms. He comes to the man with Imam al-Hassan. They say to him, oh Shaykh, you are elder than us. Do you mind looking at our wudu and tell us which one of us is doing it right, which one's doing it wrong? The man says, oh grandsons of Rasulullah, it would be my honor. Go ahead, perform the wudu. When they performed the wudu, at the end of the wudu, he looked at them and he said, it is not you who are performing it wrong, it is I who is performing it wrong. Look at the manner in which they approach. The maturity at a young age was why? Was because I'm looking at my grandfather's behavior. When my grandfather in our house lives with us, when his akhlaq is the highest akhlaq, then the grandchildren will come out in that way. And that's why Imam al-Hussein was only 5 years of age when one of the greatest and most important events in Islamic history happened. His grandfather trusted him and Hassan to come alongside him. What was the event? The event of Mubahala. Would you take a 5 and a 6-year-old to the ambassadors of a Christian country? You wouldn't. One is 5, the other is 6. The Christians of Najran came to visit the Prophet. They had a dialogue which I will discuss further inshallah later on in my analysis of Bibi Fatima. You find that when these Christians came, they discussed with the Prophet. He gave them an argument. They were not convinced by it. The Prophet said to them, very well, if you dispute with me over the knowledge that I've given you, then we'll bring our sons, you bring your sons. We'll bring our woman, you bring your woman. We'll bring ourselves, you bring yourselves. The Christian religion and its envoys, there was no one under the age of 40 as their ambassadors. All of them were elders. Rasulullah was asked, take your sons, your woman, and a man who is like yourself. The man who was like himself was Amir al-Mu'mineen. The woman, Bibi Fatima. The sons, he took Hassan and Hussein when one was only 5 and the other was only 6. What was he showing us? He was showing us, number 1, youths have to be at the front of this religion, not at the back. When we go to meet other religions, if our youth are mature, then they will lead this religion forward. If our youth has to wait to go to Hajj, then get married, then becomes religious, that's when you know you've got a religion which is quite backward. What did he do with Hassan and Hussein? With Hassan and Hussein, he put them at the front. When these Christians came, they were amazed. They were amazed that Muhammad had trust in a 5 and a 6-year-old. But what was Rasulullah doing? He was showing us, if you give young men responsibility from a young age, then they will blossom and mature earlier than if you do not trust them. Then they'll have an inferiority complex that they are not trustworthy individuals. Hassan and Hussein took this experience in their life, and you found therefore when the Christians of Najran saw this 5, they came out with the line that we will not enter a mubahala with these 5, because the amount of light that shines from their faces, if it told the mountain to move, the mountain would move from its position. Therefore, what you find, Hassan and Hussein in those early years, Imam al-Hussein, very close and attached to his grandfather. And that's why even Rasulullah, when he's dying, Rasulullah, while he's dying, Imam al-Hussein comes and lies on his chest. And when Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen wants to remove him, you find Rasulullah say, no, their grandfather is dying. Let me have more of them and let them have more of me. And I ask, as the famous poet says, if you couldn't take seeing Hussein on your chest, how did you take seeing shimmer on the chest of Hussein? The point here therefore was what? When Rasulullah died, Imam al-Hussein was how old? He was only 7 years of age at the time, and then only a few months later his mother Fatima passes away. Imagine the double blow that affects the young Hussein. As a 7-year-old, his grandfather dies, Bibi Fatima dies. And that's why from that day he built an attachment with his father like no other attachment. I tell you, nobody was as close to Amir al-Mu'mineen like Imam al-Hussein. When our 4th Imam was asked, what's your name? He said, I am Ali ibn al-Hussein. They said to him, we see your dad used to name all his sons Ali. To which Imam Zayn al-Abidin replied, if my dad had 1,000 sons, he'll name them all after his father. Imam al-Hussein's attachment to his father was phenomenal. Everywhere his father would go, because you can imagine, his father was the father of 4 orphans and Hussein was 7. Wherever his father would go, Hussein would be alongside him. Whatever sermon his father would give, Hussein would listen. Whatever piece of knowledge his father would give, Hussein would take in. That's why arguably one of the most famous hadiths in Islamic history, one of the most famous du'as in Islamic history was a du'a Imam al-Hussein learned from Imam Ali. Which du'a? Mashlul. Dua mashlul. Mashlul means what? Mashlul means the one who is paralyzed or who is stricken with a severe illness. Imam al-Hussein says, I was with my father. We were doing tawaf of the Kaaba. All of a sudden we laid our eyes on someone who was holding on to the Kaaba and crying and crying and crying. I said to my father, I've never seen anyone cry like this. My father said, Hussein, my dear son, go and see what he wants. What is it? What's wrong? When Imam al-Hussein, he says, I went to this young man, he was holding on to the Kaaba. I said to him, young man, what's wrong with you? He said, I was a person who was rude and disobedient to my father. Brothers and sisters, there is nothing worse in this religion than a disobedient child towards his mother and father. Nothing worse. Do not think your prayers and your fasts will make up for disobedience to your parents. Heaven lies under their feet. Never forget this issue. Ahlul Bayt, on numerous occasions, many of their examples were related to parents and obedience to parents. Imam al-Hussein said, so what did you do? He said, on many occasions I was rude to my father. When my father would request something, I'd rudely speak back to him. And there was an occasion when I pushed my father away from me. And do you think this is surprising? I'm telling you, in Muslim communities today, there are people who've actually pushed their fathers. And that person actually thinks his love of Hussein will be enough for him. You've not understood the equation. Hussein's whole meaning is obedience to Allah, Ahlul Bayt, and then the parents. He said, what did you do? He said, I pushed. And my father said, Wallah, I will never forgive you. And I'm going to read a dua against you for what you've done. He said, from the day he recited a supplication against me, I have been paralyzed. You see me now, my hands are holding the Kaaba and my legs don't even move. The lower part of my body has no movement. I beg of you, help me. Imam al-Hussein says, I went back to my father, the leader of my life, the person who I take the best of examples from. I said to him, oh my father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, what shall we do? He said, Hussein, is the young man sincere? He said, yes, my father. I saw tears coming from his eyes. If you've disobeyed your father and you want forgiveness, the first step is regret. The second step is let there be tears shed. Show your sincerity. Imam Amir al-Mu'min said, let him recite this dua. Imam al-Hussein said, what's the name? He said, dua mashlul. Whenever a person is ill or in grief or in a bad situation, let him recite dua mashlul after salat al-isha. And you will see the illness will be removed. Imam al-Hussein went to the person, he said to him, today after Salat al-Isha, recite the following dua. He began to recite dua mashlul for him. The person recited dua mashlul. The next day Imam al-Hussein says, I saw this person walking near the Kaaba. I looked at him, I said to him, how comes you are walking? He said, Wallah, in the name of the Prophet who God chose as his final messenger, who is your grandfather, last night in my dream I saw Rasulullah, and he said to me, come towards me, young man, as you have recited dua mashlul. He touched me on the area where I was paralyzed. As soon as I woke up, that whole area had been cured. Imagine. Imam Amir al-Mu'min, therefore Imam al-Hussein latched onto his father, because Imam al-Hussein, how old was he when his father died? Imam al-Hussein was 36 years of age when his father Imam Ali died. And Imam al-Hussein's wives, many of them he chose on the basis of his father. Imam al-Hussein, how many women did he marry? 7. How many? 7. Imam Ali, how many women did he marry? 9. Imam Ali, who were his wives? Imam Ali had married Fatima al-Zahra. He had married Amama, the niece of Fatima. He married Khawla bin Ja'far. He married Fatima bint Hazam al-Kilabiyya, who was known as Baneen. He married Asma bint Umays. He married Layla. He married Sa'id al-Thaqafiyya. He married al-Sahba. And he married who? Mahiyat, the daughter of Amr ibn Qais. Imam al-Hussein, who did he marry? Imam al-Hussein, his marriages were all monumental. He married Layla, the daughter of Abi Murrah, the son of Urwa bin Mas'ud al-Thaqafi. Layla, her grandfather, from one side, was Urwa bin Mas'ud, who the Ahlul Bayt referred to as the Mu'min of Al Yasin in the time of Rasulullah. Layla's grandfather from the other side was Abu Sufyan, because Layla's mother Maymuna is the daughter of Abu Sufyan. So Ali al-Akbar's great-grandfather on the 10th of Muharram was who? Abu Sufyan. That's why Yazid ordered his soldiers, tell my cousin, because Layla's uncle is Muawiyah and her first cousin is Yazid. Layla, Imam married her. She gave him who? Ali al-Akbar, the eldest of Imam al-Husain's sons. The historians are unanimous. The oldest son of Imam al-Hussein is Ali al-Akbar. That's unanimous. There are a couple who said Ali al-Akbar might be younger than Zayn al-Abidin. In my own personal opinion, and in the opinion of many of the great historians, Ali al-Akbar is elder than Zayn al-Abidin. That's number one. Number two, he married Rabab. Rabab's father was originally a Christian. He converted. Imam Ali married Rabab's elder sister Mahiyat. Imam al-Hassan married the next sister Hayat. Imam al-Hussein married Rabab. Number two. Number three, he married a lady called Shah Zanan. Shah Zanan, in Arabic, her name means Sayyidat al-Nisa. Imam al-Hussein, when he married her, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen said, change her name. Let her be called Shahar Banu. Because there is only one Sayyidat al-Nisa, Fatima. Shahar Banu gave Zayn al-Abidin, who I will look at tomorrow, Insha-Allah. Then you had Ishaq bin Talha. Ishaq bin Talha used to be the wife of Imam al-Hassan. When Imam al-Hassan died, in his wasiyah he wrote, "Oh Hussein, marry my wife, she is a good woman. Do not leave her as a widow with no one to protect her." Then there are two other wives who the history books differ over their names. In this period, Imam al-Hussein had different children. He had 7 sons and 4 daughters. Of his sons, Ali al-Akbar was the eldest. Ali Zayn al-Abidin. Then he had a son by the name of Ali al-Asghar. Now, Ali al-Asghar, I know in many traditions, is seen as a 6-month-old baby. In my historical research, I have never found one reference for him being a 6-month-old baby. The 6-month-old baby is called Abdullah al-Radi'. That's why if you go to the Iraqi or the Iranian or the Lebanese community, our communities will say the 6-month-old is Abdullah. Ali al-Asghar is more of an Indo-Pak trend. Ali al-Asghar in the books of narration is a son of Imam al-Hussein, that there's no doubt. But he was 7 or either 12 on the 10th of Muharram. Abdullah al-Radi' in the books is 6-month-old baby. I think what must have happened was that there must have been confusion in some of the books where Ali al-Asghar was given the age of Abdullah. Both are sons of Imam al-Hussein, but there was a difference in the names. Of the daughters, Imam al-Hussein had 4 daughters. Ruqayya, who died in Sham. Yes? Ruqayya, whose grave is in Sham. Sukayna, in my historical opinion, is different from Ruqayya and lived until an old age. But there is a narration which says Sukayna lived until an old age and she was a poet and she was a singer and so on. We reject this. Sukayna, that was Sukayna bint Khalid al-Zubayriya. Mus'ab al-Zubayri is the only narrator of this incident where he says Sukayna bint al-Hussein became a singer and a poet later on. We don't believe in this. That was Sukayna bint Khalid al-Zubayriya. This Sukayna is different. And he had a daughter called Fatima. You all know Fatima. That daughter would marry Imam al-Hassan's son Hassan. And that daughter, Imam al-Hussein used to say, no lady looks like my mother Fatima Zahra like my daughter Fatima. And then he had a 4th daughter by the name of Zainab. Therefore, in this period, before Karbalá, was the period of the marriages of Imam al-Hussein. And you find that he had his children in that time. And on top of that, what do you find? It was a turbulent period. Many of the great companions of Imam al-Hassan, of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, were killed in front of the eyes of Imam al-Hussein. His brother Imam al-Hassan was poisoned. Hujr bin Adi was killed. Amr bin Hamaq was killed. Rushayd al-Hajri was killed. For Aba Abdullah to maintain his patience in that period was difficult. But I tell you something. Aba Abdullah, before Karbalá, Karbalá had displayed every attribute before Karbalá, the difference on the 10th of Muharram is they all came together in one day. Before Karbalá, on Karbalá we always say Imam Hussain was generous, don't we? On the 10th of Muharram. Imam Hussain years before Karbalá showed his generosity. Usama ibn Zayd, when Rasulullah was about to die, he told the companions, go under the leadership of 18-year-old Usama. You remember? 18-year-old Usama, leave Medina with his army. This Usama bin Zayd, the companions didn't join him. This Usama bin Zayd was at Ghadir when he saw Rasulullah say, Man kuntu mawla, fahada aliyum mawla. Do you know after Rasulullah died, they'd come to Usama, was Ali ibn Abi Talib chosen by Rasulullah or no? He said, I don't want to get involved in these things. At the Battle of Jamal, they said to Usama, Usama, who's right, Ali or them? I don't want to get involved. I don't know, I'm not sure. At Siffin, Usama, who's right, Ali or Muawiyah? I don't know, maybe they're both good. Ali and Muawiyah are both good. At Nahrawan, Usama, who's on the right? This is a lesson for all of us. When you see injustice, don't say, you know what, I prefer not to get involved. Get involved and say who's the truth with. Because you may be the cause of dissension in history because of your silence. At the end, we don't remember the words of our enemies. We remember the silence of our friends. When this Usama was dying, he had a 60,000 dinar debt on his shoulders. Do you know who the only person he could think of to pay it back for him was? Hussain Ibn Ali. Tell me, if your father, every time it was his haqq, you just want people to speak out for your father, and you know how much he loved his father. Every time people abuse your father's right, you see this person who saw your father was on the truth and remained silent, and now Usama says, please bring Hussein, please bring Hussein. So Imam al-Hussein comes. He sees Usama lying on the bed. He says to him, Usama, what's wrong? He says, Hussein, please forgive me. Your dad was chosen on the day of Ghadir. I saw in my own eyes. And at Jamal, I knew he was right. In my own heart, I knew. Because I heard Rasulullah say Ali is with the truth and the truth is with Ali. And at Siffin I said, I don't know if Ali or Muawiyah is right, and I know Ali ibn Abi Talib is in the heavens whereas Muawiyah is on the earth. Hussein, I'm in trouble, please. He said, what is it? He said, I have 60,000 dinar debt, please help me. Abu Abdullah said, Usama, do not worry. You are remorseful over your stand, I don't mind. May Allah forgive you. He turned around to the person next to him, he said, please come and pay 60,000 dinar for Usama. That generosity, others will not display today. If my father's haqq is taken in the community, I tell you, I will keep it on my shoulder for the rest of my life. They didn't allow my father to become president. They didn't allow him to become chairman. They didn't allow him to serve water. They didn't allow him to carry, I don't know, some sort of instrument. I will keep it on my shoulder for the rest of my life. Imam al-Hussein was so generous. He looked at Usama, he said, Usama, don't worry. You may not have stood with my father, but I feel you are hurt. I'll pay the 60,000 dinar from me. Generosity. Number two, Uthman was alone in his house. The Muslims were attacking him. Who do you think it was who stood by the door of Uthman to protect him so that the Muslims are not disunited? Who was it? Hassan and Hussein. They stood at the door of Uthman. Do you know what they could have said? Uthman mistreated Abu Dhar. Uthman mistreated Abdullah bin Mas'ud. Uthman took our dad's leadership. No, we don't want disunity to occur between the Muslims. Let us remove and be tolerant. And they were the ones who stood at the door of Uthman. They were the ones who gave water to Uthman while Muslims were attacking him. And do you know what the sad thing later on is? They say Ali ibn Abi Talib is the cause of Uthman's death. Ali ibn Abi Talib sent Hussein to stand for Uthman, to be there at the door. Even if I differ with Uthman politically, at the end of the day, Muslims should not take it in their own hands to come and stab another human being. There is a particular legal system and there's a particular courtroom. That's number two. Number three, his generosity when it came to his knowledge. before Karbalá. Do you know how many great hadiths we have from Imam Hussain? I tell you, ask any Muslim, tell me one hadith of Imam Hussain. Imam Hussain says, I heard from my grandfather Rasulullah saying that the best quality of a Muslim is that he speaks little about a topic that does not concern him. How many of us have to get involved in every topic, isn't it? Every topic. People who concern us, don't concern us, we have to get involved. Habib, it's none of your business. Stay out. Stay out. No, I want to get involved. Rasulullah, Imam Hussain said, I heard Rasulullah say that the best quality of a Muslim is what? Is that he speaks less about a topic that does not concern him. Then he says, I heard my father Amir al-Mu'mineen say, please listen to this unbelievable narration. I heard my father Amir al-Mu'mineen say, I am surprised at the human being who refrains from food due to fear of illness but does not refrain from sin even though he knows about hellfire. We refrain from food because we're scared of illness, but we don't refrain from sin because we're not scared of hell. I am surprised at the one who refrains from food due to fear of illness, but does not refrain from sin even though he knows about hellfire. You would find that he'd provide, and that's why one example of Imam al-Hussain, years before Karbalá, a young man comes up to Imam al-Hussain and says, Imam al-Hussain, I can't stop sinning, and I'm just going to have to continue. What do I do? Give me some advice. Imam al-Hussain said, keep sinning. He said, sorry? He said, keep sinning. He said, Imam Hussain, I came to you for advice, you tell me keep sinning? He said, yes, keep sinning. But there are 5 conditions when you sin. Sin! But the first condition is sin in the place where Allah cannot see you. Sin! But sin in the place where Allah cannot see you. Condition number 1. He said, Abu Abdullah, Allah can see me everywhere. He said, okay. Condition number 2, sin. But don't sin on God's earth. Go and build your own earth and sin there. Number 3, sin. But don't use Allah's rizq as the energy to sin. Number 4, sin. But when the angel of death comes to take your soul away, don't say it's not the time. Number 5, sin. But when you're punished in the fire of hell, don't say, I shouldn't be here, get me out. If you've passed these 5 conditions, continue sinning, there's no problem. The person said, Ya Abu Abdullah, I'm never going to sin again after that. Because it's impossible to go through those conditions. You had that generosity that came with him, with his knowledge. Even you had the self-sacrifice of Imam al-Hussain. That's arguably the greatest moment of self-sacrifice before Karbalá was related to Karbalá. Someone says, how? Before Karbalá, in the battle of Nahrawan, you find even before this there was a moment of generosity. That's when Imam al-Hussain asked the teacher. He said to the teacher called Abu Abdurrahman al-Salami, teach my son how to recite Quran. When that teacher finished reciting Quran, teaching the kid how to recite Quran, Imam al-Hussain saw his son saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Imam got so much pearls and clothes and he gave it to the teacher. People came and said, Abu Abdullah, all this person did was teach your son how to recite Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and you give him this much hadiyah? To which he replied, what I give him is never enough because of the person who teaches my son how to mention Allah's name. It can never be enough. That person taught my son Bismillah, whatever I give him is not enough. Then on top of that, the great self-sacrifice when you see someone come to him when his father died. Imagine when your father's died and someone comes up to you from Syria. He sees you, he says, what's your name? He says, Hussein. Son of who? He says, son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said, may Allah curse you and curse your father Ali. If someone talked like that to you, how would you reply back to him? May Allah curse you and your father. The guy's name was Asam ibn Mustalaq. Imam said, is the wind of this area hurting you? Or maybe you've had a disagreement with your wife. Is there a shelter for you to stay in? Or has no one provided you with clothing? Please come and stay in my house if you are a stranger in this area. Wallah, that person began to cry. He said, Aba Abdullah, I cursed your father in front of you, and this is the way you reply back to me, by making your house available for you? He said, this is the family of Rasulullah and the way we treat people. People may come and curse us, but we come back with morals, because our grandfather Rasulullah came to perfect the morals of mankind. And that's why I will never forget the greatest self-sacrifice before Karbalá. Notice, none of these stories are anything to do with Karbalá. Before Karbalá, in the battle of Nahrawan, the soldiers who were caught by Ali ibn Abi Talib were standing there. One of the soldiers, you all know him very well. He was fighting Ali ibn Abi Talib on that day. He had some rope around his hands. It wasn't too tight, but it was around the hands. Imam al-Hussain was walking past. He saw that soldier. And the soldier looked at him and said, Hussein, I beg you, please remove this rope from around my hand, because the rope is causing nervousness in me. Remove it. And I'm asking you. Imam al-Hussain went back to his father. He said, oh my father, I'd like a favor from you. He said, what is it? He said, this person over there, do you see him? He said, yes, I see him. He said, he says to me, the rope is tight around his hand, even though you will never put a tight rope, but it seems to have been hurting him. And he asked me to remove it. Oh my father, do you allow me? He looked at him and he said, Aba Abdullah, go ahead. Aba Abdullah, why do you want to answer this? He said, Father, when someone asks through me, how can I reject? I don't want the person to be embarrassed. When you realize who this person is, that's when you realize how magnanimous a man this man is. He went back to the person. He said, give me your hands. And he removed the ropes from the hands of Shimr bin Dhil Jawshan. Tell me, which mercy did he show to you when he sat on your chest on the afternoon in Karbalá? This man, you remove a rope from his hand because when a person asks you, you do not want to embarrass them. And that is the same man who sits on your chest on the 10th of Muharram. That's Hussein. Before Karbalá, not one mention in our lectures of Aba Abdullah before Karbalá. This is Aba Abdullah before Karbalá. And that's why the 10th of Muharram wasn't Imam al-Hussain. Imam al-Hussain for years had displayed these attributes. Karbalá was when all of them came together on one day. Generosity with knowledge and forgiveness and humility and care and honor and dignity. That Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi, who was a commander of the opposition, who had blocked water from the children of Hussein, and yet the forgiving heart of Aba Abdullah forgives him. And that's why when you look at Islamic history, not only Muslims but non-Muslims come and say Hur and the way he was forgiven. The horse, which man is thirsty, but before he drinks the water he says, horse, you drink, I can't bear to see you thirsty. Today Muslim countries have no respect for animal rights, whereas the master of Islam displayed respect to his animal. Which man gives away his 6-month-old baby? Which man lies on the ground with his killer on his chest and he says to his killer, if you give me water I will intercede for you on the day of judgment? And that's why Imam al-Hussain, when you look at his biography, it's not just Muslims who have been affected by this colossal figure. No, non-Muslims as well. Look at Gandhi when he went out on his salt march with 72 people. And they said to him, Gandhi, why have you taken 72? He said, because Hussein took 72. And Hussein's 72 were eternal. I want my 72 to be eternal. I learned how to achieve victory while oppressed through Hussain Ibn Ali. That was Gandhi. Charles Dickens, when he said that there is no way a man who takes his family and his children has gone out for worldly desires. If it's for worldly desires, you'd never take your family and your children. It dictates that Hussein's mission was but a mission for God and God alone. Nehru, when he said, Hussein belongs to brotherhood, Hussein belongs to humanity, Hussein belongs to the path of righteousness. Look further, Antoine Bara, the famous Christian Lebanese, says, no battle in history has evoked as much sympathy and compassion, and from which as many lessons can be learnt, than the battle of Karbalá and the life of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Dickens, Gandhi, Nehru, Antoine Bara, all of them show us that Hussein continues to live in the hearts of every human being. And that's why the Imam says, in the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein, there is a heat that will never subside in the heart of the believer. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us with Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, and to allow us to receive his intercession in this world and the hereafter. Allow us to be amongst those who follow his message and honor his example. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the Muslims around the Islamic world. Tomorrow we will continue with the biography of Imam Zain al-Abidin. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.